This is the new Jumper EZBook X4, so this is replacing really the Jumper 3L Pro because it has the new chip in it. It's the successor. We now have the Gemini Lake, which is 200 megahertz faster, 2 megabytes more cache, HDMI 2 support, which this surprisingly has on it. I didn't expect it because it wasn't actually advertised anywhere by Jumper. But while it does have faster RAM, we've only got 4 gigabytes of it, so they've made some compromises, obviously cost reduction of the unit itself, trying to get the production cost down to increase their margins perhaps, or just keep it under that 300 US price point. And that means too, they went with a TN panel on this, so it's not an IPS. Now these images I'm showing you now, you can see that the screen actually looks alright. The color reproduction and the colors and the blacks of the screen are very good for a TN panel. And if you do look at it straight on and you're sitting down, for example, in a chair and you don't tend to move around, then this screen is usable, it is fine. But the moment you stand up or you're going to show the screen to someone else that is standing up or in another position from you, then you're obviously going to run into problems there with these panels. This is what happens. So it shifts out the TN panels. So this is not great. So we get the 4 gigabytes of RAM, the TN panel, and we do have now a much better performance really over the Apollo Lake. So it is up 25% when you look at synthetic benchmarks here. So this is Geekbench 4, 19% more speeds on multi-core score, and it is noticeable too that it does feel just a little bit snappier, quicker when using the desktop when moving around. So editing things like spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, that's all fine. A very large spreadsheet or document will take a little while to load, and it's not going to be the fastest, but definitely fine there. Streaming 4K video, YouTube, not a problem. Amazon Prime, all good. Wireless range is good. It does top out at 480 megabits per second, the Intel Wireless AC 3165 with Bluetooth 4. And playing back a very demanding file here. So this is an HEVC codec, 10-bit encoded with a very high bit rate of 140 megabits per second. A few stutters at the start. So it has the same HEVC codec and VP9 codec hardware decoding support, just like the Apollo Lake. Now on board we also do have a 37 watt hour battery. Now that's good for up to 7 hours. Now this was a best case scenario, so I put it into the battery saver mode, I lowered down the screen brightness, and I only used it for gaming for about 1 hour, YouTube for about 2 hours of streaming. Now for about 1 hour of YouTube streaming, you're going to lose approximately 12% battery, so not quite as good as the 10% battery loss I was getting with the Apollo Lake N3450 with the Jumper EZBook 3 Pro, which is a very similar model, just a slightly smaller one than in this model here. So if you're gaming, then that's going to be reduced to about 4 hours battery life. So it's not brilliant. So mixed results with the battery. I think you can expect about 6 hours, 7 hours max. It's not amazing, but it's still, I feel, is good. Now we do have USB 3 ports either side. They will power external hard drives. I have no issues with that. I tested up to 4 terabytes and it's fine. No problems. It didn't disconnect or anything like that, which did happen on some of the old models with the Apollo Lakes on him. Now the micro SD card reader is only USB 2 speed, unfortunately, so it's just wired up via USB 2 hub and not USB 3, which I'd like to see. And as you can see, the cards, they sit in nice and flush and click in place, so you shouldn't lose them. Now the EZBook X4 comes with 4 gigabytes of RAM, double data rate 4, and it is running in dual channel 2.4 gigahertz. And you also note that Windows 10 is fully activated, no problems there with the license. It was an older build, I've upgraded to the latest one. And charge times, it takes approximately 3 hours to fully charge it. So it's not the fastest, 12 volts charging is the rate that it will charge at. And they do have this nice little label on the top here now as an addition, so we can distinguish the difference between the 3.5mm headphone jack with microphone support, by the way, and then the DC in. So that's a nice touch there. So the HDMI port wasn't advertised anywhere by Jumper that it was HDMI 2. So this was a pleasant surprise because I really hate running my 4K monitor at only 30 Hz, which was the case with the Apollo Lakes, the previous generation. So the EZBook 3L Pro, only 30 Hz, the Apollo Lakes all 30 Hz, only at 4K. But now we've got 60 Hz, which means everything's nice and smooth, and that is a really good improvement there. So the keyboard, backlit now. It is really the same keyboard as the previous model, but they've just got it in silver. Now I don't really agree with the tone of silver they have used here, because at certain angles it will actually be quite difficult to see those keys. And it really forces you to turn on the backlight, which will, of course, eat into a little bit of your precious battery life. Now, it's a two-stage backlight, so we've got a low setting, a full-on brightness setting, which is the one I tend to always use so I can see the keys better, and then off. Typing on the keyboard, very good. It is, again, as mentioned, it's just like the TechTablets F7 keyboard as well. It's the same exact model, the same original design manufacturer. So very good keyboard, a little bit of flex there, but not enough to be an issue. And the same again goes for the touchpad. So it's a Windows Precision driver controlled touchpad with gestures, and it does work well. The mouse cursor sometimes isn't quite as accurate as I would like it to be, but very, very minor complaint here. And it really is overall a large touchpad and a good touchpad considering the price of this laptop. It even beats some of those gaming touchpads you get that aren't even precision ones and are quite horrible. This one is good at least. Now on the bottom you will notice that the flap there for the SSD, if you want to install one, well it actually comes with one pre-installed, 128 gigabytes, is now longer compared to the previous model, and that's because it will take up to 2280 in size, which is a good move here. So that's another improvement here that Jumper have come through with the new model. Now for Linux support, I did test out the latest build of Linux Mint with the 18.04 kernel, and this distro is working fine. Everything works, the wireless controlling the brightness, the display, but the mouse buttons, for some strange and odd reason, aren't working. I do expect that actually to be fixed, hopefully sometime soon, and then you'll have full Linux support for this model, which is really good. Now when it comes to audio performance, the 3.5mm jack is clear. I have noticed that sometimes a little bit of a pop noise will come through when the sound first turns on. That can be a little bit irritating. There was a fix for that on the Apollo Lakes and even the Core M's that were doing that. So I believe that we should be able to fix that through drivers. The speakers, well, they're not brilliant. I will give you a sample of them. I wish they were just a little bit louder, but they do the job. And the speaker location, well, they're located actually just in here. We have 4 of them, so 2 here and then another 2 right there. And then the webcam, so it's a 720p webcam with dual array microphones either side. I'll give you a sample of that in just a minute, but you will see that it is at least a 30 frames per second 720p webcam and not limited to 15 like some of the older ones. So it tends to rock around a little bit because of the screen wobble. It does wobble a little bit when you type on it. Now, if I type, you can still hear those keys and the feedback, and you also hear through the mics. You hear that? There's this interference that's just there in the background, which is slightly annoying. Now, I don't know whether that is drivers, it could be my unit. It's there and it's not great to hear that. Now, when you take a look at the internals, you'll see there's a large copper heatsink on here, but that still did not stop me running into what I would call rather high temperatures, 93 degrees. That's not too far away from running into thermal throttling, which I think will trigger at probably about 95 degrees. Now checking out gaming performance, so it has the Intel UHD 600. This is an integrated graphics card. It's not dedicated, it is not powerful, it's very weak, just like the Apollo Lakes. It is really the same exact architecture, just a slight tweak in the frame rate, and the boost from the RAM really is what is helping that frame rate. So it is up a little bit in games like League of Legends. You can see here we're getting a modest frame rate, 1080p, medium settings, definitely playable this one here. Moving over now then to Counter-Strike, it's at 720p on the lowest settings and not playable really. It's just a bit too choppy, and even though you might be able to get a lucky kill or headshot, you can't really game well with this kind of frame rate, so it's not for demanding games. But even so, I still decided to test out Project Cars here, you can see, and horrendous frame rate, so 5 frames per second to about 6 or 7. Complete and utter stuttery, laggy mess that you cannot play. So AAA titles, things like that, if you want to play the latest Call of Duty game, Modern Warfare, whatever, it's not going to work. Clearly, this is only for older, lighter titles like League of Legends and your old games like Half-Life 2. Okay, so let me just recap here because I know that some of you just skipped right to the end, to the conclusion. So we have a very decent build quality. It is only 1.37 kilos in weight. And the TN panel, yes, it's going to be a deal breaker for some people. So if you don't always look at your screen straight on and this kind of vertical viewing angle is an issue for you, clearly do not go for this model here. The same goes for 4 gigabytes of RAM. If you feel that that's not going to be enough, wait for an 8 gigabyte model that hopefully will be coming in the future. I think TechTablets is going to be releasing one. The USB 3 ports, they will power external hard drives. We've got HDMI 2 support, which is really good to see. SSD bay now goes up to 2280 in size, but you will have to remove the whole back and then adjust that little clip there so you can fit it in. But it's very minor and really good to see, again, that Jumper have allowed us to use the larger SSDs in this. Webcam quality is alright, speaker quality not really that brilliant. Battery life, I would say, is good, not amazing. It really depends on what you're doing. So if you're pushing it very hard, expect about 5 hours. If you're going very lightly on it, so just maybe edge use, spreadsheets, things like that, nothing really demanding, then you can squeeze it out to about 7.5 hours, which is very decent. So overall, as a package, oh, almost forgot, thermals. Okay, 93 degrees, yeah, that's getting hot. Could just be my unit, and that was only when gaming when it's doing this. So I think I might have to do a thermal mod on this, copper heatsink mod, and just address those thermals, perhaps a repaste, which you should never have to do. So that isn't wonderful to see that. But apart from all of that, I feel for the price, the backlit keyboard you get, the touchpad, it is a decent package, but I really do want to see more from Jumper. I hope they're watching this video. I'd like to see them use an IPS panel, give us an 8 gigabyte RAM option, take a look at the thermals if it's not just my unit, and then we have probably the best budget laptop you can get for the money. Thank you so much for watching this review here, and do keep an eye on the channel because I will have plenty more coming. This month is going to be a little crazy, lots of reviews, so do subscribe to the channel and also hit that notification bell icon there so you get the notifications of all the new videos coming out when I post them. Bye for now.